Kevin Mulhearn, who has worked hard to find a way to get justice for the men that he represents, most recently in federal district court. He is here today with two of those plaintiffs, David Hilbrand and Jim Zimmerman, to share their experiences with us. Kevin?
First, I want to thank Assemblywoman Markey for her noble support of this much-needed legislation. Assemblywoman Markey does not hear the word no when it comes to this issue. She is saying yes, must be. It's the only sensible, rational, sane response to this epidemic issue. I want to thank a few other people here. To my right, James Zimmerman. To my left is David Hilbrand, two of the 10 plaintiffs in the Poly Prep case, Zimmerman versus Poly Prep. Also want to thank Bobby and Mike and Ms. Ulrich for their passionate work on behalf of victims of child abuse in New York State and elsewhere. Ms. Ulrich, your work is much appreciated by advocates such as us. Thank you. And I also want to thank Chris Gavigan for his very impassioned plea. Chris is the type of guy who met me one time 2.5 years ago. He found out that my father died. He was at his wake, not knowing me at all. He's that kind of passionate, caring human being. If other members of the legislature and other people in this community were more like Chris, we'd all be a lot better off. So Chris, keep on the fight, keep on doing what you're doing. You're doing God's work. Poly Prep is my alma mater. I played football for Coach Foglietta from 1978 to 1981. Jim Zimmerman was the captain of my team senior year. David Hilbrand was a Poly Prep graduate. From 1966 to 1991, Phil Foglietta was regarded as the Vince Lombardi of high school football in Brooklyn. He was charismatic, he was dynamic. When he walked into a room, the energy of the room gravitated to him. But Coach Foglietta had a fatal, sick flaw. He was a child rapist and a pedophile and a sex abuser of children. He was a rapist and abuser of boys as young as 10, 11, 12, 17, 18. He went up and down the gamut of people from different backgrounds, with different family experiences, all over, wherever Phil Foglietta could get his hands on a unwilling victim, I should say. He would exploit his own power to manipulate the situation to his benefit. And I have to tell you, I'm a lawyer for 22 years. I've never been more proud to represent individuals in any case, David and Jim and the other plaintiffs in the Poly Prep case. The kind of coverage that they show on a daily basis in confronting this issue. I know Mike and Bobby are having that same kind of courage in their own battles is remarkable. I tip my hats to them. I see the strength that they have on a daily basis, and I don't know where they get it from. And I'm truly proud to be their attorney. We are battling Poly Prep in federal court. We are trying to sue Poly Prep on the basis of negligent retention supervision, breach of fiduciary duties, civil RICO, and the new cause of action, which I'm added to amended complaint, it's going to be filed later this week, Title IX, sexual harassment and sexual abuse. Now, our particular situation is a little different in that we believe that we have enough right now to circumvent the existing statute of limitations hurdle because, in our case, Poly Prep made affirmative misrepresentations and engaged in affirmative acts of misconduct beyond the acts of sexual abuse themselves. So we think we fit squarely within a very narrow window of the equitable estoppel, fraudulent concealment exception to the statute of limitations. But I can tell you, as an attorney who's been working on this case with all my might for the last few years, I'm well aware of the hurdle that statute of limitations presents to victims of sexual abuse. The existing law in New York State on statute of limitations for sexual abuse is nothing less than an abomination. It basically rewards and applauds institutions who have actual knowledge that they have someone amongst their ranks abusing children. It rewards these institutions for concealing the abuse from the victims themselves, family members of the victims, law enforcement, and other people within the ranks of the school. It's an absurd response to a critical problem. Absolutely absurd. This bill that Assemblywoman Markey has proposed is the same logical rational response to that problem. It will allow victims, really survivors, to get their day in court, to basically hold those who allowed their abuse to occur, who had actual knowledge and were more concerned about protecting the name and reputation of the institution, the school, be it Poly Prep, Syracuse, Kent State, whatever other school or institution. This bill protects the individuals above the school. It tells institutions, you must protect people. You must protect children, our most vulnerable people, above and beyond the name and reputation of your school or your church or your synagogue or any other institution that is entrusted with the care and protection of our children. This is necessary legislation. It is high time that New York State come out of the dark ages of sexual abuse and engage in the age of enlightenment, as they did in California, Delaware, and other states that enacted these one-year windows for statute of limitations issues. It is time. I have to tell you, Chris said something that struck a chord with me. Talking about truth, justice. Benjamin Disraeli once said, justice is truth in action. In this case, in New York State, right now, our status quo is injustice based on deception and concealment and falsehood in action. It's absurd, it's ridiculous, it's preposterous, it must change. Thank you so much. I have David Hilbrand would like to say a few words.
My name is David Hilbrand. I'm a survivor of a serial child abuser, sexual child abuser, Poly Prep in Brooklyn. And as a victim of that child abuser, I can tell you that this is a crime that is unlike most crimes, unlike any I know. And it's a violation that's perpetrated on children who don't know what's happening to them. They don't know why it's happening to them. And it spins them into a world of confusion and guilt that goes on and on for years. I'd like to thank you guys all for being here to cover this, because one of the good things that comes out of events like this, I've discovered, is that almost every time that there are stories written about these situations, I will get either calls or emails, usually emails. Calls are usually too personal, from people who have been abused by this same man, Foglietta. They're heartbreaking. They're absolutely heartbreaking. And they all sort of take the same form and the same tone. They say, in fact, I got one less than 3 weeks ago, because there was a story recently with my name in it. And the guy said, I have written this email to you 100 times in my head. It's been in my inbox for 3 months. I've been trying to work up the courage to send it to you. Thank you so much for speaking up. I can never do that. I have never told my parents. I have never told my wife. I don't think I ever will. I'm presuming this is a man who is probably in his late 40s. I immediately wrote him back and tried to form some kind of relationship with him, encouraged him to at least stay in touch, try and get help, make him know that there is help available for people who have suffered from this. And despite repeated attempts, he just dropped out of sight. He didn't want to continue to talk about it. It was too painful for him. This is a man who, as I said, is almost 50 years old, so presumably this is an event that happened to him 36 years ago. And it is still so painful to him that he has trouble talking to me, someone who he knows is another victim, someone who he knows will be nothing but sympathetic to him, and he can't talk to me about it, much less his family. He can't talk to his wife about it, and he can't talk to me, another victim, about it. So when they tell you that to pass a law like the one that Assemblywoman Markey has brought up so many times, that will just open the floodgates for all these victims to come out, I can tell you from my experience, that's malarkey. Most of the victims that I have met are so terrified and so scared that they will never, ever come out and admit that they are victims. There are very few men that I know of who have been able to come ahead and say, yes, I was abused. Yes, I will put my name on it. And that will always be the case. And that's why this is a very different crime than any other kind of crime, and it's one that exists outside of time.